These are my compression trainers from Tak Knife that I've bought over the last little while. I think these products are amongst the best training products I have ever bought. Tak Knife is also producing two versions of my own self-defense tool, one a compression version and the other a functional plastic version that you can use to protect yourself or use to counter violence, however you want to word it. But I was buying Tak Knife products long before they offered to do this for me, and this review has nothing to do with the partnership we have, although I'm very proud of that. But we have been using the Tak Knife Street Knife in our combatives program for over a year and a half now. And for what we do with it, this is a good product. The compression trainers are hard enough that you feel, but soft enough that they won't cause a serious injury of any kind, unless you get them directly in the eyes, of course, which we should be wearing eye protection when we do this. But when we spar, we're mainly going for the body all the way to the neck. I really enjoy stabbing the neck or slashing it when I'm sparring, and I can do that with the Tak Knife products, with the Tak Knife compression products, to be specific, without worrying too much about causing an injury to my partner. The other thing that's nice about these things is when I want to go hard with a knife, or in this case the Boondock compression pick, but when I'm going hard on my equipment, I don't wreck my equipment with these things. They are soft enough where I can use them on my heavy bags without worrying about puncturing them. If you look at this torso bag that I'm using right here, you can see what happens when you use hard training tools on your equipment. I mean, this guy's held together with duct tape. I do have one slight criticism of the Tak Knife compression knives, in that the smaller ones tend to soften up when you use them hard over time. Not a lot, but they do change. But that's okay. Equipment gets worn. If you're using your equipment hard, it will change. It will break down. Doesn't matter what equipment I'm talking about. So the fact that these soften up a bit over time, that's okay. The thicker, bigger ones don't seem to do it as much, but there's a balance there. You know, when you first get them, they're a little bit stiff, but as you use them, they become a little softer. Now, that softness does make it hard for training things like lever disarms and things like that. However, we have other equipment for training this kind of stuff, and Tak Knife does sell a lot of hard plastic trainers that you can use for disarm training and things like that. What I do love about this is that when we're drilling, we can come at each other very hard and not have to worry about breaking a rib, breaking fingers, and things like that. These are absolutely excellent training knives. I haven't used the training gun that I've received from them very much, but we did do some gun disarms and it worked like a charm. It is stiff enough where you can still work against a tight grip. The Tak Knife Brawler is probably one of my favorite training knives to use. It is a fairly girthy training knife, and because of that, it is holding up very well to hard use. The thick grip on the Brawler lets you know when you're not holding tight enough and when your grip is compromised, because you will end up losing the knife at certain points in your sparring. This does happen. The awesome thing about the Street Knife is that it is about the size of what most people carry for folders. So when you're sparring, you're not using something that's way longer than what you have in your pocket. So your distance and range is exactly the same as your distance and range with the most common size of pocket knives. The Draco compressor knife is also a good length to mimic a knife that you would carry on a daily basis. And this knife is nice and thick, and like the Brawler, will stand up to a lot of abuse. And I'm sorry, I called them the compression knives. They're actually called compressor. The material they use in these knives is very tough. I mean, we've been using the street knives for years and have been doing a lot of hard sparring and training with them. When I do my Medusa training on another human being, I use these rather than a steel, aluminum, or hard plastic trainer, because I like my training partners and I want to keep them safe. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want people having little bruises all over themselves when we train. And even with these knives, you will get bruises, you will get marks, but you won't get injuries. That's what I like about it. And with those thick knives, you can really feel it because they are fairly stiff. So you will feel the contact, but you won't break a rib. This is very important to me. And people may criticize the fact that they're soft and say, well, it doesn't give a realistic feedback. Well, nothing does. Nothing gives a realistic feedback because it's not the same as getting stabbed, regardless of what you use. You could use shock knives and create adrenaline, which is what shock knives are good for. But understand that everybody I've talked to who've been stabbed or cut in a knife assault, or even when I've cut myself in the use of live blades, or I should say the misuse, I didn't feel the cut. People I know who've gotten stabbed did not feel the stab. So the idea of the shock knife being more realistic isn't true. What the shock knife does is gives you a feeling of panic because there is a cost to getting cut. The problem is that when we train with training knives, there is very little cost to getting stabbed, so we don't have that adrenaline dump that the shock knife will create. This is where the shock knife would be a really good piece of equipment to have and use on occasion, because with knives like this, with these compressor knives, we're playing games. It's hard to create the feeling of this is a real weapon. We try to do that, but in the end, we're still having a really good time, which is good and beneficial. But we're not going through the physiological change of real fear, which is hard to create in a training environment. You can, but that takes a lot of work and it's not always good for you, but it is something you should try to do once in a while. But the way the compressor knife aids in creating a little bit of reality is that you can come in super aggressive and not worry about really hurting your partner. So you can create some very, very high levels of aggression. There is one more product that I have that I think is really amazing from Tak Knife. That is the compressor box cutter. What a great idea. This is something that you can mimic a very common weapon that is available to improvise if you work in a warehouse or something like that. And a lot of street people will use because they're cheap and easy to steal. You can steal them from any hardware store. You can steal them from any work site. So what a great idea. Tak Knife has a great catalog of equipment, including functional weapons and self-defense gear. Check them out. Link in the description.